Blessed be and welcome. I'm glad everyone is joining us here for this experiment in virtual meditation. Yesterday, we passed another one of the cross quarter days, the point on the wheel of the year that falls between the solstices and the equinoxes. That means we are now equidistant from both the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. So it might still feel like full summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, but we have already begun the decline towards the point where day and night are equal, and from there on into the darkness of winter. Some call this holiday Lammas or Loafmas, and others use the Gaelic term Lunasa. As the name suggests, this date was sacred to the god Lugh, a mythological warrior king associated with games of skill, oaths, truth, and the law. It's also the first of 3 harvest festivals. Every gardener knows that our plots have begun to produce their abundance. At least hopefully. Some are not being quite so abundant this year, but that's the nature of the harvest. The other name for this date, Lammas, reflects this as well. This is a festival associated with the grain harvest, which supplied our ancestors with their daily bread. Of course, the folk personification of the dying and reborn grain god, John Barleycorn, is even more strongly linked to the beer they washed the bread down with. For little Sir John and the nut brown bowl proved the strongest man at last, and anyone who's been laid low by a little too much barley wine can attest to the truth of that. But while we may have begun to harvest some things, we are not yet at the end of the growing season, nor do we yet know whether what we have planted will sustain us through the winter. While this isn't such a concern in the modern era of Grubhub and Instacart, it is a metaphor that still holds true, perhaps especially so in this fraught election season. We stand at a turning point on the wheel, our future survival feeling particularly precarious this year. For those of us who are striving for social justice, this is an incredibly scary time. We've worked, we continue to work towards a goal that is far from certain. So many have already sacrificed so much, but we still have many long weeks to go before we can know if it will have been enough. So with today's meditation, I hope to give us a way to look back over what we may have seeded as the year began and what we hope yet to harvest, while virtually enjoying the pleasures to be found on a long, late summer afternoon. Our physical bodies may not be able to go on vacation this year, but our minds can visit anywhere we can imagine. I usually begin these by putting up a protective sphere around the group. My background is in the fairy tradition, as I've mentioned before, so I often use the 7 directions. In addition to the standard north, south, east, and west, I add above, below, and center. Since we aren't sharing the same physical space today, I'll just read a version of these, and you don't have to face them as we go, but try at least to focus your attention on each in turn. Are we ready? Am I ready? Okay, so let's begin by putting up a sphere that will hold all of us together here in virtual space, wherever our physical bodies might be. And we'll begin creating our sphere in the north. So, by ancient earthwork, fort, and barrow, at the midnight hour on the winter solstice, I call up castle walls and hobbit holes and rough-hewn timbers, the gifts of the material plane, the strength of foundation, earth to the ground. Join us now, if you will, in this sphere of creation. Turning to the east, by the piper at the gates of dawn, at sunrise on the morning of the spring equinox, I call up bursting crocus and hyacinth perfume, the clarity and wisdom of understanding, to speak to us in the tongue of wind. Join us now, if you will, in this sphere of creation. Turning to the south, with the passion of lovers at midday on the summer solstice, I call up lust for life, ecstatic dance around midsummer bonfires, the will, the passion, and the spark that heats our loins and brings a flush to the face. Join us now, if you will, in this sphere of creation. And from the west, with prayers for rain at twilight on the eve of the autumn equinox, I call up mystic insight from the rainbow's end, Where the sky meets the sea and the space between the worlds is thin, the depth of compassion, the drink of dreamers. Join us now, if you will, in this sphere of creation. We look now to the above with the diamond bullet of enlightenment from crystalline towers and iridescent spheres. I call up inner knowledge, the spiritual plane, the light of a fully expanded awareness, the endless reflection of a mirror looking into itself. Join us now, if you will, in the sphere of creation. And to the below, with the velvet cloak of endarkenment, from the 0 point, the void, the no thing that never was, I call up the endlessness of infinity, emptiness and stillness, the mysteries of the tomb and the knowledge of that which is not, the darkness on the edge of forever, the starless mire. Join us now, if you will, in this sphere of creation. And finally, from the center, with the multifaceted gem of reflection, from that central point round which all else resolves, I call up the all that is, the calm at the center of the storm, the line between the yin and the yang, unity and the reconciliation of all opposites. Join us now, if you will, in this sphere of creation. The sphere can be seen as a protected space, large enough to hold us all within, keeping us safely together. And as this stream is potentially visible to anyone, anywhere on the planet, let's visualize this sphere as encompassing the whole of Mother Earth, holding us all, warding off that which threatens, even if only for a little while. Each of you is assisting with this sphere, holding it up with your presence here with us today or any future time when you may see this. We are co-creators of this reality. And so for a time, we're going to envision a safer, saner, healthier world together. So I'd like everyone to make sure that you are sitting comfortably with your back as straight as possible. The spine is an energy channel for your nerve impulses and your chi, but it's also a divining rod that connects you through your chakras to the world around you, of which we are still all a part. We are in the world as cells are in a body. And if you haven't already, I'll ask you now to close your eyes and begin breathing slowly and fully. Feel your breath circle in, moving down and through you into your lungs and your belly. With each breath you take in, you feel yourself becoming more relaxed. As with each breath you breathe out, more and more stress, tension, and everyday cares are leaving you. And as you relax and begin to settle more, feel this energy that is flowing in move further and further into your body, pushing through any blockages, moving down your arms and out from your palms, as it moves down your legs and out through the soles of your feet. Even further now, moving down your spinal column, down, down, seeking the earth beneath us as the roots of a tree seek water below the soil. Feel your roots spread out below you, seeking that nourishment, that connection. And as you do, notice too that despite the physical distance of our bodies, your roots begin to encounter others, roots put out by others in this virtual circle, on and on. Feel your roots reaching out to each person who is tuned in here with us, entwining and nestling together. Our roots are forming their own circle below us, connecting us all inside our protective sphere, rooting us in the earth that supports us and is our home. Draw in another breath now, a new breath, one that is moving upward. This breath fills your head, the space behind your eyes, still moving up and up, till at last the energy begins to bubble up from the top of your head, spilling out like a fountain, arching and splashing gracefully. And as it does, the drops begin to mingle with those of others in this circle, sparkling and dancing, creating another circle above us of light and liquid and air, gently connecting us with the soothing sound of water music and quiet flashes of rainbow refraction. As our roots did below, so too let this fountain reach out and across, connecting you with each person here in this liminal space until we are linked above as below, a perfect double sphere of energy and intent that surrounds us and protects us. Now we have entered a new realm in a time that is not a time and a place that is not a place. The spheres that hold us have become a world of our own making, a place we can safely gather, a place you can return to whenever you wish. And so, in your mind's eye, I'd like you to envision yourself sitting beneath a tree, very like the one that roots you to the ground and opens you to the sky. The trunk behind you is broad and sturdy, the leafy branches reaching up and out in a wide circle above you, the roots thickly knotted and providing space in between which you find yourself comfortably seated. Take a moment to appreciate this tree, its protective shelter, its ancient marriage to the ground below. And as you look around, you see that while this tree may or may not stand alone, it is clearly the elder guardian of this land, as far as your eye can see. You stand and stretch, looking outwards, though the shade cast by its boughs fall in a wide circle. Beyond it is an open and sunny meadow full of native grasses and wildflowers. You watch as a butterfly comes into view, dipping to sample first one bloom, then the next, before flitting up towards the branches, and then down again, directly in front of you. You hold out your hand, a finger outstretched, and it lights, flexing its wings, slowly for a moment, so that you can fully appreciate their shape and color. But it stays for only a brief time before heading back towards the wildflowers. Having nothing better to do on this summer afternoon, you decide to follow, watching as it meanders across the field in a merry dance that nonetheless leads you clearly onwards. You haven't gone very far before you see that the wildflower meadow in which you found yourself soon gives way to a more conventional field, now cut low and golden in the afternoon light. And as you approach the line between flower and field, you see a row of colorful booths set up in the near distance, what appears to be an old-fashioned country fair. Charmed, you decide to see what's on display. As you point yourself in that direction, a butterfly, possibly the same one, dips and bobs in front of you, then flutters ahead towards the stands as well. As you get closer, you see that the booths are arranged on either side of a long central causeway, the entrance to which is framed by a giant arch built of stacked hay bales. Sunflowers in full bloom flank these bales, their bright yellow faces stretching towards the sun, and a colorful banner bidding you welcome is draped between the stacks. Stepping beneath, you begin to meander down the aisle. Some booths are little more than a simple cart with a market umbrella or planks set across two wooden barrels. Others are more elaborate, with hand-painted backdrops and patchwork tablecloths. Displays range from bushels of ripe tomatoes, enormous squash, and juicy grapes, to sparkling jars of homemade jellies, pickles, and preserves, to seasonal handicrafts. You would stay and browse, but others here seem headed in a particular direction, down the causeway towards some specific destination. You do make a stop at one stand for a glass of fresh iced tea or lemonade, but something is drawing people towards the far end of the aisle, so you decide to see what is attracting their interest. As you draw nearer to the end of the fair booths, you begin to hear laughter and calls back and forth. You soon see that the midway ends at the edge of a large field of corn into which a gap has been cut a doorway or entrance that clearly leads into the forest of plants. This entrance, too, is framed with straw bales and a banner identifying it as a maze. The voices you hear come from others who are already finding their way through, calling to friends or family who have taken other turnings. You begin to follow the pathway, beaten dirt and bits of straw underfoot. To either side, the plants are held back by sturdy twine, strung from shoulder-height poles. Fat ears, their browning silk spilling lushly down, jut from the stalks everywhere you look. Though you continue to hear others, the plants are so thick that no one can be seen, save for a glimpse now and then of brightly colored clothes seen flashing past between the stems. At times, the path offers you a choice of left or right. At other points, it splits into two, running parallel to each other. As you get further in, you encounter little vignettes hidden amongst the leaves, such as a scarecrow or a life-size corn dolly standing guard over the crop. Elsewhere, you find yourself obliged to pass under bowers built from dried stalks or through a tunnel constructed from an irrigation pipe. But though you may have to double back and try a different route a time or two, eventually, at last, you do reach the end. Here, the exit is framed by a simple wooden trellis with a common whitewashed garden gate standing open at the end. Stepping out, you find that off to one side is the entrance to a small valley or natural amphitheater. People who had exited the maze before you are now headed there, making their way along the nearby hillside slope and finding a spot to take a seat. You're unsure of what to expect, but clearly the locals know something will be happening soon, so you too walk along the ridge until you find a likely spot to make yourself comfortable, facing the mown field below. Barely have you gotten settled before a trumpet blast and a flourish of drums calls your attention back towards the entrance. Intent on finding a seat, you hadn't really noticed the painted school bus parked in such a way as to close off part of the valley opening. But now, from the far side of it, a curiously dressed band marches onto the field. Although they are all in black, each of them wears a coat covered in strips and tatters of material that flutter about them as they advance. Top hats, sprouting feathers, are covered in badges and trinkets atop their heads, giving them a remarkably solemn look, despite their otherwise ragged appearance. 3 drummers lead the way, 2 on snares, and a third bearing a huge round bass drum strapped to their chest. Behind them march an assortment of players: trumpet and trombone, saxophone, violin, accordion, and tuba. Playing saucy renditions of old folk tunes, they make a circuit of the field before returning to a spot near where they entered. Perhaps it's natural or have been dug out, but a plateau stage is scooped from the hillside opposite where you stand, providing them with the stage they'll occupy for the proceedings ahead. After swapping some instruments about, they begin an obvious fanfare. At once, another group enters from the same spot on the far side of the bus. They too are dressed in tatterdemalion fashion, but instead of black, each of these has donned a different color of the rainbow. 2, they wear bands of bells at ankle, knee, and wrist, so they jingle with every step. And each carries a short staff topped with a white, flag-like handkerchief. Once they've reached the center of the field, they arrange themselves in 2 rows, 4 on a side, facing each other. At this, the fanfare comes to a stop, and the band then begins a more sprightly tune. The Morris dancers, for that is what they are, spring at once into action. They dash up and down with the energy of punks in a mosh pit, seeming to barely miss each other in a wild melee, then sorting themselves back into a line, where they tap their staffs against those of the person opposite them. This adds a percussive underscore at the end of each line of the tune before they return to swinging each other in circles or rushing back and forth, knees and elbows flying everywhere, yet never quite connecting with anyone else on the field, fortunately. Their dance at last over, they turn outwards, most, but not all, facing the audience. They begin to march, one towards each of the four corners of the field, the others to the top and bottom, or the 2 points marking the middle. As it happens, you are near one of those midpoints, and a dancer clad in gold and yellow strips is soon advancing up the hill quite near you. As you watch their progress, you lose track for a moment of what the others are doing. But as the yellow dancer ascends the hill behind you, you turn your attention back towards the central clearing. At each of the corners and 4 points between sits a small stack of 3 or 4 hay bales you had not paid attention to before now. Once a dancer has gotten to their stack, they stop, turning back inwards to watch and be sure that each of them has gotten to their station, for those at the ends have further to go than others. When all are in position, their coats forming a rainbow of color encircling the field, each goes behind their bales, then lifts out a hand-painted, handcrafted toadstool with a white stem and a bright red top dotted with luminescent specks, raising them up as if presenting a baby to the queen. They turn away again and take several long paces outwards behind the bales. There they place these mushrooms carefully on the ground, then return to the bales with the same formal pace before seating themselves as if to watch the show with the rest of us. This done, your attention returns to the school bus that apparently marks off the troop's backstage area. A fine fellow, shirtless under a formal if well-worn topcoat, pops out from the far side of the bus. He has long curly hair and a suggestion of pointed ear tips peeking up amongst those curls, a comically winged top hat, and pleated skirt strapped over blue jeans completing his outfit. Stepping to the center of the arena, he begins to speak. Come, see the show! Well, you're already here, I guess, and have no choice. For here you see, and with this, he points to the mushrooms placed around the perimeter. You are trapped inside a fairy ring, ha ha, ho ho, and hee hee. I am Mercury, messenger of the gods, though known to others as Hermes, Thoth, or Odin, and my fabled troupe, a fairy band, is here to spread wonder across the land. Youth may come and age may go, but no more circuses like this show. He bows deeply towards the assembled crowd, backing off towards the band platform as he does so. Joining them on their grassy stage, he picks up a guitar and joins in as they begin a new tune. This is a pretty little melody whose sweet strains make you think of a perfect springtime morning. From behind the school bus, 2 enormous puppets can be seen rising up before coming out around it and onto the field. One is clearly a woman, her peaceful, smiling face nodding to the crowd as she emerges, her arms spread open in welcome, her flowing dress painted with flowers. The other is her consort, his hair flowing free, a beard wreathing his chin, torques wrapped about his upper arms, and a long, long swath of plaid kilting his waist, then coming up to drape over one shoulder. These 2 advance slowly down the field, as each has a handful of white-clad operators beneath, directing them to nod or wave. The Lord and Lady come together on the field, their faces tipping forward for a kiss, their arms closing about each other before opening back up and moving to stand on either side of the band on the far hillside. This serves as a cue for a new group of performers, a dozen or so dressed in black t-shirts and simple black cotton pants, each wearing a headdress with 2 or 3 large green leaves waving in the air above them. They march out 2 at a time, then form rows, moving down the field in formation until they reach the center. Once in place, the music comes to a stop, and they all first kneel and then bend forward so that they are prostrate against the ground, now appearing as a neat little plot of corn shoots growing in the center of the field. The Lord and Lady puppets step forward, raising their hands in blessing above the new crop before returning to their watchful positions. From behind the bus comes a stilt walker, dressed in coveralls and a wide-brimmed straw hat, easily recognizable as a farmer. They carry an oversized watering can, which, when tipped over the heads of the waiting shoots, releases long silver streamers from its nozzle. As this water flutters over each section of the little garden, the shoots raise their heads and return to a kneeling position, giving the effect of growing a little as they do so. At the same time, the large puppets behind them raise their hands from a resting position up towards the sky, as if encouraging the little seedlings to grow. The farmer makes a second circuit around the plot. This time, the watering can brings the corn plants to their feet, standing tall and raising their green leaves towards the sky. The Lord and Lady rejoice at this, clasping their hands in front of them, perhaps as benediction. On a third pass, the farmer's attention causes those portraying the plants to reach behind them, raising a stalk previously hidden in the back of their shirts so that a golden tassel of grain can be seen emerging. It rises up behind each performer's head, taking its place among the green leaves they already wear as crowns. The audience breaks into a cheer at this. The effect is clever, and it gives the appearance of a ripening field, exactly like those that no doubt lie in every direction from where you sit. The farmer retires towards the bus at this, while the Lord and Lady advance to make their own circuit around the successful crop. Having completed it, they once again embrace, and the band begins a new, more sweetly melancholy tune. Once again, the giant puppets slowly embrace each other, yet this time the music suggests they are making a farewell. The lady moves back while the Lord begins his advance towards the waiting field. The corn plants begin to sway, nodding their heads from side to side in time to the music, then at a cue, each taking a step out from the position that they had held. Some move forward and others back, so that a space begins to open in the center of their symbolic plot. They repeat this gesture several times until an opening has been made large enough to hold the Lord of the harvest. He advances among them, waving his hands above their heads of grain and leaf, blessing each as he moves amongst them. When at last he reaches the center, the music shifts again, this time becoming even more mournful. At that, the farmer returns towards the field, but instead of a watering can, this time they hold an enormous gold-colored scythe. The farmer too enters into the field until they are in the center of the space along with the God figure. The music reaches a crescendo as the farmer raises the scythe in both hands, then lowers it in slow motion towards what would be the knees of the giant lord. When contact is made, the music abruptly stops, and the farmer steps out from amongst the plants as the figure of the harvest lord begins to crumple towards the ground. The giant lady, meanwhile, raises her hands to her eyes, perhaps not wishing to see her love brought low. The face of the Lord is lowered towards the ground, the puppeteers bringing each part of him in towards the center. As they do this, each of the corn plants removes the sheaf of grain from their crown, holding it in front of them. When at last the Lord has fallen, they step in unison back towards the center, taking turns to lay their offering of grain atop his fallen body. The lady then steps forward, raising her hands above all, then beckoning the corn plants to gather in under her skirt. At the same time, the body of the Lord is processed away, his face still lowered towards the ground, as he is carried off stage and out of sight. The music picks up again as the lady lowers her hands, bringing them over her midsection. When she opens them out again, the former corn plants emerge from beneath her skirts, their leafy crowns replaced by hats bearing oversized loaves of bread. The audience cheers even louder at this, knowing it symbolizes a harvest secured against the want of the wintry season to come. The freshly baked loaves begin a dance in front of the grain goddess, bowing to each other and passing, then turning to form a square before repeating the figure. As they perform, the nearly forgotten Morris dancers rise from their seats around the perimeter and descend towards the central field, each now carrying a corn broom tied with a ribbon that matches the color of their coat. As soon as they reach the edges of the field, they begin a dance of their own, sweeping back and forth as they edge their way in towards the bread at the center. At the same time, they lift their voices in a simple chant. By 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, sweep Lammas bounty in the door. By 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, sweep out injustice, want, and hate. When they reach the dancing bread, they engage them by ones and twos, gently herding the loaves towards the exit, while the lady puppet looks on, clapping her giant hands in time with the rhythm of the chant. Once all the dancers have left the field, the lady herself makes a final tour, moving to the far end, then processing back towards her entrance point, alternately raising her hands in benediction and blowing kisses to all those assembled on the hillside slope. Just before she too leaves the field, she turns back, extending an arm outwards and then waving it forward in a beckoning motion, clearly inviting the audience to follow. With her final exit, the band now begins a spirited New Orleans-style jazz rendition of the old folk tune, God Barleycorn. Those around you are getting up, heading back across the hillside ridge, then down across the field towards a gap at the front of the bus. As you rise to follow, you look about, noticing that at some point the fairy ring that held everyone there inside its spelled circumference has been taken down, perhaps put away to await a future performance. You make your way across and down the gentle slope, approaching the designated exit point. On the far side of the bus, you find the rainbow-colored Morris dancers waiting, handing small pencils and pieces of rough, handmade hemp paper to each person as they leave. "What have you sown?" asks one. "What do you hope to harvest?" From the other side comes the question, "What do you fear? What would you winnow or burn away?" Notice, as you pass, which side you receive your paper from, which question you are being asked. Just past where they are standing, people are filing along aisles created of twine and rough-hewn posts. You cannot quite see what everyone is queuing for, but as your only other option is to duck under the ropes and into the performers' backstage area, you too begin to move along towards an unknown destination. The line moves fairly quickly, however, and it is not long before you are approaching a shed built from weathered planks. As you get to the point where the line lets out, you see that the rest of the Morris dancers are waiting there, holding large baskets labeled Hope and Fear. You see that people are writing down an answer on the paper they were given, then depositing their replies into the basket on one side or the other. Take a moment now, as the line brings you closer to the end, and answer the question you were asked. What do you hope to gain this harvest season? Alternately, what would you weed out from your life and discard? Write your answer down, folding the paper if you like, so that no one but you may know. Now, step towards the basket, collecting either hopes or fears, whichever is right for you. Place your answer within. As you do so, you hear a child nearby asking their parent, "What do they do with them all?" You wonder this as well, and so strain to catch the reply. "All the hopes will be planted in the lady's flower bed so that they can grow strong," the parent replies. "And the fears will go in the center of tonight's bonfire, passing away with summer's end." Having done this, you approach the long wooden counter of the shed. There, the black-clad corn plants, turned loaves of bread, are handing out slices of the latter, topped with a tangy green spread. You accept a piece and bite in, finding it a delicious, chewy sourdough, perfectly set off by the pulverized garlic that tops it. At the end of the shed is a large barrel for collecting the pencils, and you drop yours in as well as you pass by. Reaching the far end of the shed structure, you note that around the back side of it seems to be a tavern of sorts, with an open-air seating area stretching out beyond. Many of the adults from the hillside are drifting in that direction, no doubt off to enjoy another fine product of the local grain harvest. You are tempted to join them, but the sun is already lowering in the western sky, and you decide not to chance trying to find your way back after dark. Instead, you turn in the opposite direction that has somehow led you back to the end of the midway, the rows of booths stretching away in front of you. From this vantage, you can just make out the silhouette of the tree where you began your journey against the deepening blue of a late afternoon sky. Your bread finished, you begin to stroll back down the causeway, stopping here and there to admire the wares on display. Take a little time as you go. See if you find anything that you would like to take back from this magical harvest fair. And as you wander back along the vendor's aisle, you consider the myth behind the lovely pageant that you saw play out on the field. Spirit could be seen literally manifesting in matter, then enacting a divine sacrifice that keeps the wheel moving ever onward. Too, this was not a solo act. The Lord went quite directly into the crops, most of whom contributed to his passing. The effort to move the puppets required a communal effort, as did the baking and the distribution of the sourdough bread. The whole event serves as a reminder of how much more we can accomplish by working together, one with another. Two, the small ritual you participated in with the rainbow-clad dancers was not only communal, but another reflection of the harvest theme. In order to eat the harvested grain, the farmer must remove the chaff. The dancers asked all who passed by both what harvest they hoped for and what chaff they would discard. No matter which question you answered at the time, the other applies as well. As you pass the last few booths, you consider the second question. What harvest do you hope for? What useless things are you ready to discard? This year's metaphorical seeds may already have been planted, their growth shaped by the stars, and particularly some of the slower moving generational planets. Our crop this season will likely be very different from what we may have expected as we moved out of the shadows of the longest night. Yet our care and nurture may still produce something that nourishes our soul. Thinking of such matters, you scarcely notice that you have passed back out through the hay bale entrance arch and are now ambling across the freshly mown field that lies outside the fair boundaries. Perhaps this very field produced the grain that went into the bread, you realize, and you offer a small prayer of thanks as you cross it. As you finish, a butterfly crosses in front of you. Surely not the same one as before, though it does seem to be making its erratic way back towards the same tree where your journey began. Reaching the border where the field gives way to the wildflower meadow, you look towards that tree, now silhouetted against the dark sapphire sky. And as you retrace your steps towards its welcoming shelter, you notice first one, then another, then many little lights. Fireflies settled amongst its branches are waking in the twilight and signaling to the world, "Here I am here." And each replies to the others around them, "Yes, I see you. We are here together." Settling yourself back into the same comfortable spot between this grandmother tree's enormous old roots, you repeat their message back. "I am here. We are here together." You recognize consciously, as the fireflies do instinctively, that the collective of all of us together is both what contributes to our general harvest and what will see us through the dark months still to come, together. With that word on your lips, you close your eyes for a moment and then reopen them, your real physical eyes now, to find yourself where you started, knowing that even as we are necessarily distant from one another at present, our minds are together, our wills united in a wish to reap a joyous and bountiful harvest for us all. So with that, let us take a moment to thank the Center for holding a presence in this sphere of creation and providing the point around which all else revolves. Go if you must, but stay if you will. Hail and farewell. We thank too the below, whose presence in this sphere of creation has provided the nothing from which all arises. Go if you must, but stay if you will. Hail and farewell. Our thanks to the above, whose presence in this sphere of creation has provided the light of awareness that blooms in all our hearts. Go if you must, but stay if you will. Hail and farewell. We thank the West, whose presence in this sphere of creation has provided us the primordial experience and essence of love. Go if you must, but stay if you will. Hail and farewell. Our thanks to the South, whose presence in this sphere of creation has provided us the energy and inspiration to carry our gifts into the world. Go if you must, but stay if you will. Hail and farewell. So too we thank the East, whose presence in this sphere of creation has provided the ability to imagine, to think, and to visualize our dreams and perhaps make them real. Go if you must, but stay if you will. Hail and farewell. And we give thanks to the North, whose presence in this sphere of creation has provided the foundation upon which all else is based. Go if you must, stay if you will. Hail and farewell. And now our circle is open, but never broken. So merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. And I thank everybody for joining me here today. You can find previous meditations of mine up on YouTube as well as on the Buckland channel. I am under the name Sasha Peppercorn there because reasons, but that's SASCHAPEPPERCORN, Sasha Peppercorn.